very excited to be here today. Interesting to hear Paul talk about the world of public relations and how the world has been changing. I think many of the points that he made you'll be hearing in my speech as well. I work at Mindshare, which is a media agency, just as it is here in Greece. But my job in Mindshare Denmark is to try to rattle our clients a little bit. I work with the advertising part of this industry, the creative side, the strategy side. And as Paul said, I believe, then my personal belief is that the only way to actually gain a strategic edge in the marketplace today is by positioning yourself with storytelling. That is becoming increasingly difficult because we're seeing a world where advertising is being is struggling. It's more difficult today than ever to reach our audience, and I will talk to you a little bit about a concept that we have called After Ad. This concept is created for some of our largest clients who are very dependent on spending money and buying advertising on TV and in digital to gain attention. To just try to provoke them into thinking, what if we took away that chance for you? What if you could not buy advertising anymore? What would then happen? And I want to just start off with a video clip that we show our clients at the start of every workshop.
Hello, this is WWN. President of the World, Dr. Emma Goldman, today announced new restrictions in her continuing fight against the world's problems. As of midnight last night, all paid inventory-based advertising has been banned globally. The ban includes all mainstream media channels, including TV, print, radio, outdoor, digital, and any advertisement that involves one company paying another for advertising space.
Brands make us buy. Brands make us consume. Brands make us want things we don't need or that aren't good for us. Brands make us live beyond our means. Today we are saying no more conspicuous consumption driven by advertising. Today we are taking control back. Today is After Ad.
So, welcome to March 2018. We're now in After Ad. A global ban on advertising has been presented by the new world president to combat the horrible things that branded advertising does to consumers. And this is usually where the brand managers, the CMOs of the companies that I talk to, start to get a little bit fidgetive. They are maybe a little bit nervous about what is going to happen. And then I basically present them with the facts. And the facts is that the ban on advertising is already here. We are basically trying to talk our way out of it, but it's just facts. But I'll try to light a little bit of a fire at the end of this horrible corridor for you right now. There is a way out of it, and we'll talk about that later. These are some Danish numbers, but I don't think that they are very different from anywhere else in the world. Every year in Mindshare we do a study of what the Danish population thinks of advertising. What are their attitudes toward advertising? And the purple line is their annoyance or irritation. Sorry, the purple line, the below line is their attention towards advertising. That is increasingly dropping from 2010 to 16. And their annoyance or irritation over advertising is increasingly higher and higher. So we're seeing a lot of people who are becoming more and more annoyed by advertising, but they are paying less and less attention to it. And this whole, let's call it attention deficit, or the gap between what annoys me and what actually pays my attention is global. We're seeing the effects of marketing, the effects of advertising dollars is decreasing, and we're also unfortunately seeing that we are just trying to up our frequency. So instead of actually trying to create more and better creatives, we're just trying to create more frequency by more ads to the same target audience. This is what I call the gap of advertising, and I'll try to come back to that later. If we look at Google, which is a very nice place for data, and we just Google ad block, there's about 52 million hits that talk about ad blocking. If we at the same time, we try to maybe Google ad-free, we're up at 708 million hits on ad-free things, everything from ad-free apps to TV to streaming to whatever sites you have, music listening, whatever. If we try to compare this number, 708 million, which is a very high, but not necessarily that high of a number in ad-free, we try to compare that to a very popular person like Kim Kardashian. She has only 42 million hits. So in that sense, ad-free is about 15 times more popular than Kim Kardashian itself. Which is interesting for me. There's so many consumers out there every single day trying to search for ways to get rid of advertising. That's pretty interesting. If we look at TV numbers, they're dropping heavily. I don't know if it's the same in Greece, but at least in my country, in the US, in the UK, in Germany, the traditional TV viewing is dropping steadily. And especially in the younger audiences, if you look at the number here, 37.6, that's a 37.6% decrease over the past 5 years in TV viewing with kids between 12 and 17 years, and 40% decrease with younger audiences of 18 to 24 years. So TV is not necessarily the medium that we can rely on anymore. If we look at people who are cable cutters, or what do you call them, maybe cord nevers or cable nevers, people who don't actually pay for anything in regards to pay TV. You have 25% today that do not pay for traditional TV. That's the number down here. And that number will increase steadily over the next few years, definitely, without a doubt. So these people will never ever be able to see any form of advertising on TV. At the same time, the global picture of ad blocking is just exploding. There are right now 615 million devices globally who are ad blocking something. That's 380 million mobile devices and about 236 million desktop devices. So this is a huge spread trend and is only growing. And this will probably keep and continue to grow. Even in emerging markets today, as Southeast Asia and Africa, we're seeing ad blocking as a tendency. And ad blocking is not just a younger audience thing. It's also older people. 15% of people 65 plus use ad blocking services globally, which is a very interesting number, I think, because I think most people in marketing believe that that's only the younger audience, the tech-savvy people. But let me ask in here, how many of you guys use ad blockers? And you actually do advertising. That's interesting. I had to delete mine because my boss got mad at me. So now I don't have an ad blocker anymore, at least not officially. When it comes to display advertising, that has been that's been the Achilles heel of our industry for a long time, but we can't really live without it, it seems. But ComScore has a very interesting fact. It's around 0.06% of all banners that are actually clicked on. And of those 0.6% of the clicks, it's only 8% of users that drive 85% of all clicks. That means that we have a very click-friendly 8% of a population that drive almost 85% of all the clicks out there. And if you are to believe some of the various reports that have come out lately, about 70% of all internet traffic and clicks on banners are created by bots or automated. So the question is, can we even trust numbers such as clicks if we believe that our advertising may not actually reach the audience that we see? I know that in Group M, at least in Denmark, we are working very heavily on what we call in-view advertising on display. We did a survey for about a year ago where we tried to figure out how many of our display ads are actually shown to people where they can see them and not just somewhere on a site that has been loaded. And it was about 90% of all display advertising that was never actually shown to a person. It was never in screen, but it still counted. And that is something that we need to worry about as an industry, because that is phony numbers, and of course it's also something that will impact us heavily on our efficiency. We're also seeing these types of services come up. They're basically all based on one USP. And the only USP that these services have is that they are ad-free. So people are actually willing to spend a lot of money on services only for the fact that you don't have ads on them. When we ask people in Denmark, and I assume again that this is the same picture in some other places in the world, 74% believe that there's more advertising today than ever before. That's not true, but that's the belief. 42% of the Danish audience are willing to pay for services such as Netflix only to get rid of advertising. I don't know if there's any other business or industry in the world that has a product that people are willing to pay to not receive. I've tried to find one, and it's maybe if you do cancer, that might be a thing as well, but it's not really an industry. So this is, I mean, I'm not trying to be the self-loathing advertising guy up here, but it is something that is very real to us right now, that there are so many people out there who hate what we do fundamentally that much that they're willing to spend money to not receive it. 59% of them delete their digital tracks and data, which means they delete cookies or something to get rid of our retargeting. And 39% of the younger audience, in Denmark at least, have downloaded an ad blocker. So we are in a world right now that I would call, we are in a de facto advertising ban already. It won't come from politicians, it won't come from top, it won't come from a world president. It is already here. And we need to face the facts of this. So if we are to believe that we are in somehow of an after-ad world today, there's some fundamental truths. And one is that that which cannot be delivered must be discovered. So if we can't bring our message to people, and we can't push our message out to people, we need to make sure that our message is discovered. It needs to be able to be found somewhere. In this world, we're moving away from a world where we try to buy ourselves attention, and we need to try to earn affection. And that's a lot of what Paul was talking about, with being credible, telling real life stories, speaking to the heart. We can't just push our agenda anymore on TV, on display, on social, where we just tell people what to think and believe with the USP of a product. We really need to start earning affection, because that is the only way in the world of after ad, at least, to get any kind of traction. We are also trying to talk about customization at scale. How are we going to be personal and have a personal, real relationship with our customers, one-to-one, at scale? What Paul again talked about as relationship marketing, with emails being sent out to you. That is the dumb way of doing customization at scale. We really need to try to figure out how do we do this in a real way so it actually makes sense. This old world of paid, owned, and earned, with paid media, owned media, and earned media, and that whole split is also going away in after ad, because obviously you don't have paid media anymore. And we need to reframe that into what we call found, used, kept, and shared. These are the four new fundamental principles of a world without advertising. Found basically means that your content should be able to be discovered easily. That means in social media feeds, on search, anywhere else where people talk about it. It needs to be useful, meaning it needs to be so useful that it actually helps people in some way. It needs to solve a problem for the user. It needs to help them or entertain them. And it needs to entertain or help them enough that they want to keep it, that they want to bookmark your site, that they want to download your app, that they want to have it somewhere, so that you have a connection to this audience next time you need to communicate to them. Because if you don't have that, you won't be able to actually communicate to them the next time, because remember, you still can't buy any ads. And in this world, the last part about shared is probably the most important, because if people don't go through this process of having found it, having used it, kept it, and then actually share it, it will be very hard to be discovered. So you need to go through all these steps. And these are some of the things that I speak to my clients about. If we are to try to just reframe advertising, and instead of using some of the old ways of saying, do we have enough reach? Do we have enough advertising money to actually spread this message? Let's try and go through this checklist. Ask them, is it discoverable? Is it useful for our audience? Does it actually help them solve a problem? So instead of asking yourself, what does my company want to say? What do we need to say to clients? Ask yourself, what do clients want? What are their needs? And how can I help them solve a problem? How do we make them keep it? And how do we make them share it? If you can answer these 4 questions, I guarantee that you will be very successful in an advertising world as well. I think Paul also talked about sponsorships. Hugely important things. We sponsor a lot of different football clubs, artists, whatever we have. But in this world, we don't look at participation numbers. We don't look at whether your event has 1 million people there or 100. We look at how many of these people will be willing to amplify our message. How many of them will be willing to spread it? So we're looking at influencers maybe. We're looking at affinity towards the message that we have. Maybe this room of 100 people in Greece will be more impactful for me if my message is about advertising than attending a conference of 1 million people who don't care. And that's the way we need to reframe it. I think in After Ad, I usually use this customer journey that is from Altimeter. With McKinsey, I think they created it. It's basically a way of looking at the new customer journey. At the bottom corner, you have a formulation of a need. I need a new kitchen. I tend to walk into an awareness where I become more aware of advertising around kitchens. I go into a consideration mode. I go into pre-commerce. And when I hit this evaluation phase, that is the second phase of pre-commerce, I'm on Google, I'm on digital media, I'm asking my friends, I'm reading reviews. And all of these places are traditionally places where advertising money has not been spent. We spent our money in the beginning. We spend our money on formulating needs and basically trying to make people want our product. And that will be, if not hard, then if not necessary, or then definitely very difficult to do in an after-ad world. So we need to focus our money on the evaluation phase, and that content up there is meant for exploration and explanation. And the key means here is to create content that people, in some way, that will help them make a better decision. So if I help a person through this funnel to make a better decision of what kind of kitchen will be a good kitchen for them, then I'm absolutely certain that they will probably pick my kitchen at the end. But if we are to do anything and kind of push media over here, there's a rule. We need to be agile, and we need to make sure that what we do is something that is culturally relevant. And I just had a chat with my Polish colleague over here, which you will hear in a moment. We talked about the word relevance. What does that mean? And is there a good Polish word for it or a good Danish word for it? But what it means when I say it is that it is something that is culturally relevant for you, so that you feel that this message applies to me, society, and the things that I'm interested in right now. The most intriguing or popular piece of content ever created in this real-time relevant world is this tweet by Oreos that they tweeted out during the Super Bowl in 2014. The lights went out, everybody was watching the Super Bowl, there was no light on, and they tweeted out this: you can still dunk in the dark, so meaning you can dunk your Oreo in your milk, and it was very funny. Today this seems like a dinosaur. This seems like a very old school piece of communication almost. But it really worked back then. I think it had 16,000 retweets. And what we're trying to say here is that real-time marketing is something that is interesting, but it's very, very difficult to do. Because if you spend your advertising time sitting there wondering, when will this moment happen, and how can I newsjack it, and how can I get in there, you're probably going to wait for a long time. And when the moment actually comes, you're probably going to surpass it. So what we've tried to create instead is a way of trying to structure this in what we call planning for agility. Planning for Agility is a workshop format where we try to basically time or plan these real-time activities. We split moments into what we call fixed moments. A fixed moment would be, for example, an election. We know when it's coming. We know the date. It could be the World Cup. It could be a festival. It could be something else. So you can plan for that to be relevant with a message, if it's a display banner ad, a print ad, a TV ad, a social media ad, something like that. That is fairly simple to do, and we've been doing that for ages, but it seems like we could probably get better at it as well. And we also have what we call fluid moments. Fluid moments are moments that we know will occur in the near future, we just don't know when. That could be a large demonstration in front of your parliament. It could be a bank that once again goes bankrupt. It could be a CEO that has a ridiculously high payment. Something that is interesting, it could also be a celebrity couple that is on a divorce. If we are to plan for these moments, we need to make sure that we know exactly what kind of brand DNA we have and what kind of message we would want to portray if this happens. So what we do in this workshop is that we basically go through these different scenarios, and then we ask the brand managers, what could be a possible saying, what could be a possible message, and then we design this whole template for them. So what we do is we look at the brand positioning, we look at the cultural trigger, and then we look at what kind of asset should we have. This example is from a baseball player in the US who became a father. And because he became a father, he missed 2 games of baseball. And it was at the end of the season, and they were supposed to go to the playoffs. He was a star player, and he had a lot of backlash. People were angry at him because he missed these games because he wanted to be there for his newborn kid. So what Huggies did is they make diapers. Huggies tweeted this: "Congrats at Met Daniel Murphy on Noah's birth. Honoring all dads for each Huggies supports Daniel. Hashtag use will donate diapers to Diaper Network." So what they basically did is try to just hijack this with their purpose to say that we support dads on maternity leave or paternity leave, and it got them a lot of attention on a PR level. And another example that we have, you don't necessarily have to have a good purpose to do this. This is another example. There's a cultural trigger. Let's say, for example, that cultural trigger is your competitor saying something interesting or new. My colleagues at Mindshare in London did this for their client, Jaguar. When Mercedes, they sent out this ad.
3, 2, 1.
Upside down, boy, you turn me inside out and round. I said upside down, you're turning me, you're giving love instinctively. Round and round, you're turning me. I say to thee respectfully, upside down, you're turning me, you're giving love instinctively. Round and round, you're turning me. I say to thee respectfully, I said upside down, you're turning me.
So a very, very funny ad. It went viral, and of course Jaguar needed to respond. So within 9 days, they came up with this.
See? It's just like a Mercedes. Huh?
And then, of course, the conversation went wild. So all of Jaguar's fans started teasing the Mercedes fans that they're chickens and their car was a chicken and my car is a cool cat. And from then on, it was all fun and games, and Mercedes and Jaguar had a few rounds on Twitter and Facebook, and then it all went back to normal. But this is a way of grabbing attention in the world of after ad. You really need to start to think about these cultural events as something that you can grab as a brand. Whether if you're an advertiser or a PR agency, this is a brilliant way of doing it. So in this new world of after ad, there are three pillars. The first one is personalization and conversation. I'll get into that in a minute. There's purpose that completely trumps discounts and prices. And there's service and utility. And the first one I want to talk about is service and utility. Because service and utility is really becoming the cornerstone of your digital strategy. If you don't have that, it seems very, very hard to win the evaluation phase that we saw earlier of that second step of the pre-commerce part. So service and utility is the new marketing. That is a fundamental truth that I would like to just throw out there for you today. This is an example of a sunscreen. It's a magnet for your kitchen, for your refrigerator. And it basically draws the data from, in Denmark it will be DMI, but here some kind of other weather forecast scenario. And it tells you what kind of sunscreen factor you would need. This is a piece of marketing that is very much after ad. It is easy to find. It is usable. It is kept because it's a magnet you put on your refrigerator. Is it shareable? Well, I believe it is. I think people would ask questions about it and share it maybe and take pictures of it. And it's a fairly cheap thing to do. And if you're Garnier and you would like to position yourselves as the sunscreen company in the world, why not start to produce these and throw them out there? Another perfect example is one of my absolute favorite cases of this year. It won at the Eurobest for, I think, best data application as well. I'm just going to show it to you. Other than the fact that this is a very nice case, the case video, damn. I need to hire that guy the next time. I need to make a case video. It's a really good case video. What they did here is that they combined the data that they have on all of their athletes. They put it into a one-to-one messaging system. So you don't have a widespread one-size-fits-all feed narrative on social media. You get it right on your WeChat, on your SMS, or on your Messenger. And you are nudged every single morning by your personal expert to make sure that you reach your goals. And that is very much in Nike's brand, just do it. So I think it's a perfect case of a lot of the things that we're talking about in After Ad, because this is found, used, kept, and shared. Another thing that we're seeing is social media is becoming private. And what we saw before that Nike solved is how to one-to-one message these people. Because what we're seeing is that people spend less and less time in news feeds. They are more and more spending time in private groups on Facebook, on Snapchat, in Messenger apps. And recently, not even recently, this is from Q4 in 2015, but the messaging apps absolutely surpassed social networks by a lot, and now they are absolutely way ahead of them. There's no doubt that the whole communication of social media is changing right now. We're not seeing people share videos or content on their Facebook profile or Twitter profile in the same amount that they used to do. We are becoming more and more private. If I ever share anything, it's because I try to brand myself, but none of my friends do. I am the only one in my friend network who ever shares anything on Facebook almost, and the rest of them only share things on Messenger or in private groups or on Snapchat, and there they share a lot. But we can't see it, and we can't track it, and we can't measure it. But we just need to figure out how will the brand be relevant in a world where it's one-to-one messaging and chat messages between me and my 5 best friends. I work a lot with automotive industries. I don't know how many of you guys work with cars or car dealerships. Some of you. It's basically one of those very complex digital customer journeys that takes 3 to 6 months before you decide whether or not which car you want to buy. And some of the numbers that we're seeing right now are pretty interesting. 33% of people would consider actually buying a car online without ever seeing it in real life. 90% of them would wish the buying process was more transparent. 61% have prepared themselves in detail for the negotiation with the salesperson. And 53% of all car buyers believe that they know more about the car than the salesperson because of their extensive research online. So you have a group of people who think that they know more than the salesperson. They think that it's a very untransparent and not very nice experience to talk to salespeople, and they would actually prefer to maybe buy it online. If we then look at the average amount of visits to a dealership over the past 5 years, that number has dropped from five visits to a car dealership down to 1.8, or average of 2. That means that when a person walks into a car dealership today, he is going to buy a car from you or someone else. You are in the top 2. So when somebody walks into your store today, you need to be very serious about actually getting them to buy your car or help them in the direction of actually buying your car, because if they walk out of that store again, they're not coming back. Another thing that I thought was very interesting was something that Jim Farley said. He's the Executive Vice President of Global Marketing for Ford. He said that a large portion of the traffic on their mobile website is coming from people who are standing outside of their dealerships when they're closed. That's because people don't want to talk to salespeople. They go there to see and look at the cars, but they go after hours because they don't want to meet a person who's trying to selling them a car. This is amazing. So people will basically drive to a Ford dealership, they'll stand outside there, and from there they'll visit Ford.com's mobile page to see what's the price of the car, what's the extra features, etc. This is digital self-serving, and this is becoming more and more prevalent, and we need to figure out how to work our way through that. One of the answers that we are trying to implement for Ford in Denmark, at least, are what we call chatbots. Facebook Messenger has them. WeChat is going to have them very soon. And a lot of other of these messenger apps will be able to fit in these little AIs or chatbots that will be able to serve clients. So, for example, imagine that a person doesn't want to talk to a car dealership, but he would like to maybe talk to our chatbot that will tell him exactly what kind of car will fit his needs. Let's, for example, say the chatbot will ask you, what is the price that you would be able to buy a car for? You click something. The next question from the chatbot would be, how many people in your household? Do you have kids? Next question would be, do you care about safety more, or is it more features, etc., etc.? And after maybe a list of 10 questions, it will tell you that this is probably the car that you should buy for your demands. That is a different way of approaching car dealerships and sales than having a person in an actual store. This is an example from a personal shopper. So instead of having an actual personal shopper, this is a chatbot with a personal shopper in it. You'll basically just call it up on your messenger, not call it, but you'll just chat with it, and it will ask you about 10 or 12 questions, and it will literally give you a very exact recommendation of what kind of clothes you should be buying from their store, and it works. Another way of trying to get into these conversations or trying to be spread in these very private social media networks is through Snapchat lenses. This is one that Nike did for their new Switch campaign with Cristiano Ronaldo, and then of course the promotion of the movie The Ring. These lenses are hugely popular. They're also very expensive to buy with Snapchat, but they are popular and they're being sent around to friends. And this is one way of gaining some kind of attention in a world of after ad, where people are limited to maybe speaking to 5 or 10 of their best friends. What if one of the things that they sent during the day is your advertising? That would be interesting, at least. Another way of doing it on Snapchat are these geo filters. If you can in some way try to figure out how to be relevant on a day or within a geographical area, this might be some way as well of reaching your audience. I have a case from the Netherlands, and I'm not trying to sell Snapchat ads here at all, but I think it's interesting. We ran a lens on King's Day in Netherlands last year, and these results are, for me, pretty stunning. On one day, 92,000 people send out Snapchats with user-generated content with this brand. So you have 92,000 people who sent some kind of branded content to their friends. That is pretty unique. They spent 25 seconds with the lens, and about 590,000 people saw this lens in action, which for me is very, very good numbers. I have never had a social media campaign, at least, when 92,000 people did anything in relations to branded content for me. The third pillar I talked about was purpose, and I heard Paul talk about it as well, and it is one of those things that is becoming more and more important. You probably all know this quote: people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And that is in essence true, because we are not convinced by facts, numbers, and actual product USPs. That is all after rationalization. We are convinced with our stomach, with our hearts, and one of the main things, and I think also Paul actually mentioned it, but purpose is one of those things that resounds with us as human beings, because it talks to our heart more than it talks to our brain. How many of you people know what this company stands for? It's a lot of you. Dove has been promoting real beauty and average normal women for many years. How many of you know what L'Oreal stands for as a brand? Actually more. Can anyone tell me what they actually stand for? What's their mission? Because you're worth it? That's Maybelline, I think. That's Maybelline. Isn't it? L'Oreal, their message is offering beauty for all. They want to create a world where everyone is beautiful or has the opportunity of being beautiful. That's what it says on their website. I guess that's a purpose, but maybe that doesn't really resound as well as real beauty. At least they haven't activated it well enough. I have Unilever as a client, and I am not responsible for this at all. I wish I was. But their CMO globally says that the brands in Unilever's portfolio that have a purpose which succeeds sales, they grow twice as fast as those who don't. So right now, all of the Unilever portfolio of about 400 brands, those brands that have a purpose, they grow twice as fast as the others. So there is something here that will actually resound on the financial part. You can sell more. I usually talk to my clients when I talk about creativity in the world of After Ad with this little quote. It says, there is basically no greater danger than playing it safe. People hate advertising, but they love advertising in particular. There's always one piece of advertising that people will love and share and think is beautiful or awesome. Like, for example, the Real Beauty campaign for Dove, or the Momondo campaign for the DNA journey. And if you are one of those brands today that try to play it safe and try to make a normal, relatively uninspiring ad just to push it out there with TV, there's only one thing that is certain, and that is that you will gain a little less traction than you did the last time you did the same thing. So you won't really succeed in your marketing if you just play it safe. And one of the things that I always wonder about when we speak about engagement, we want to engage our clients and we want to create engagement. It's usually on social media, and we do it with these things. We do it with contests, like if you, share and like, A versus B. What do you think about? We put up memes on Fridays that say, have a nice Friday, and then people like that. It has nothing to do with the product, nothing to do with the brand. But when we talk about real engagement, where we actually make people talk to us, where we try to make people feel something, that's when usually the brands that I speak to, they try to cringe themselves and they try to fold inside of their little shell and say that has nothing to do with us. And I don't understand why brands are more scared of having 10% of the population hate them than having 90% of the population love them. I don't understand why we don't have any of these topics on our border. Hot engagement topics like feminism, gender equality, environment, refugees, tax evasion, entrepreneurship, LGBT, language and culture. Take a stand as a brand today, and you will be rewarded. That is absolutely certain, especially in a world of After Ad, because there is only one rule here, and that is that if you are being talked about, if you are being loved, and if you have loyal customers, you keep your customers. And that is hard to buy. I have a few more thoughts, and one of them is a plea to you. I don't like this word, disruption, but I need to use it today to just ask you to think about how can you disrupt yourself. In the world of After Ad, without any advertising, there are only a limited number of brands that will survive, and those will be the most nimble, most agile, and those who are first in their market or in their segment to create something that will keep customers extremely loyal. I have a case, once again, it's a Danish case, but it's a case from a bank called Danske Bank, Danish bank. They created 3 years ago a little mobile service called Mobile Pay, where you basically just send money very easily to your friends and family and whoever with this little piece of service or app. It's free, no charge at all. And about 3 million Danes use this service today. And we are only 5.5 million Danish people. So that's over half of the population who use a service from our Danish bank. And before that, they were hugely unpopular. Everybody hated this bank because they were part of the financial crisis. And after this, their net promoter score, which Paul also talked about, has skyrocketed. So it's all about creating service and utility today where you disrupt yourself, because this is something that they don't make money on, but this creates loyal customers. And the world is really changing quickly right now. And there was once upon a time where it was maybe feasible for you to be a fast second mover. When the internet started, you could be able to just relax and sit back and see what your competitors did, make them do all of the mistakes that they could do on the internet and create websites that didn't work and apps, etc. And then be a fast second mover when they figured it out and then swoop in. But that doesn't work anymore. There is no room for a second in this world. There is only the number one. Some of these things that technology is driving for us right now could be, for example, if you were a beverage company. Do you sell sodas? Do you sell water? Do you sell beer in any way? This soda streamer, once this is being connected to the internet in the Internet of Things, and some kind of 16-year-old guy in Silicon Valley figures out how to hack the recipe for Coca-Cola, you'll be able to download a Coke in your home, and you will never have to visit a store again to get your Coke. And when I told this to the CMO of a large Danish brewery who does soda, she looked at me and said, well, but that's illegal. And that was her basic instinct to say, well, you can't do that because that is illegal. Well, that didn't really work for streaming and streaming music or videos or anything. The whole illegal industry of downloading movies is now what we see as Netflix. It is normal, but we just pay for it. The same goes for Spotify, for example. This will happen. The same thing will happen if you have a physical product. Do you sell any kind of physical product? Within 10 years from now, these will be household 3D printers, be able to print whatever you basically need or want. Do you have that lacking piece of your Lego Christmas present that you bought for your 5-year-old son, and now his pirate ship can't be built completely fully? You just print your new Lego brick. If I was Lego, for example, I would definitely have this service online where you could be able to 3D print your own Lego bricks. But imagine this in your industry or whatever you do. Do you have a physical product? This will probably come in and disrupt you because people will be able to download whatever you do or whatever you have, and you won't be able to stop them. So why not try to get ahead of that curve and create something where you hold the cards? You are the site where they come to download the raw papers so you actually can print these things. If you have a physical store where you sell things, you know that it's increasingly difficult to get people to visit that store. Maybe you should start wondering, how can we do something in virtual reality? How can we start to bring our store to people instead of having them come to our store? I think one of the most interesting developments in the near future will probably be virtual reality, which in then 3 to 4 years will probably be disrupted by this technology, which is augmented reality. Because in the augmented reality, you'll be able to experience the world as it is, but just with add-ons. Where in virtual reality, you are going into a submersive, one-to-one, very solid experience for yourself. Imagine this, for example. In 5 years, I'm here, I'm speaking again, you're bored because you've heard it before, and you can just put up the football game right next to me instead of having to watch me, but I think that you're just watching me. That will probably be interesting to try to get a hold of our teenagers at that point, but let's see what happens. So my basic plea to you guys in After Ad is 3 things. Think about how can you be useful for your audience, how can you be found, how can you be kept, and how can you be shared. Can you create a purpose that succeeds sales, that creates loyal customers? Can you create a service or a utility that helps people make a better decision when it comes to your product? Then you will probably win the digital game. And if you do that, think about how can you disrupt yourself using some of these technologies that I've just been through. And that is basically all from me. Thanks.